Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Eco and Energy Talk. India is going through a challenging monsoon season. Under the influence of El Nino, many parts of country are experiencing a significant rainfall deficit. But there are also some regions like Northeast India where we are witnessing floods. At a time like this, it becomes very important to understand the monsoon not just as a weather phenomena, but as a force that has shaped our landscapes, history, culture, and way of life. For that conversation, I traveled to beautiful hill town of Mussoorie, where I met acclaimed author Stephen Alter. His latest book, The Fragrance of Rain, A Brief History of the Monsoon, offers a fascinating journey through the science, history, literature, and cultural significance of the monsoon. Before we continue, if you enjoy thoughtful conversations on the environment, climate change, energy, and science, please consider subscribing to Eco and Energy Talk. And to support independent, in-depth journalism, you can also become a member by clicking the Join button. Your support enables me to bring more conversations like this to you. Now, let's head to Mussoorie and begin this special conversation with Stephen Alter. In this interview, besides his new book, we also discuss his acclaimed works like Wild Himalayas, Becoming a Mountain, and The Cobra's Gaze, and talk about issues like poor urban planning and climate change. I begin by asking him how the idea for this book came to him and what he believes is its central message.
Sure. Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here with you. And आपसे मिलके बड़ी खुशी हुई. But no, this book, usually when I write a book, I come up with a topic and I then suggest it to the publisher and they accept it or they don't accept it. But in this is one of the few, in fact, the only example of a book where I have been requested by the publisher to write on a specific topic because they had a series of books. And when they requested that I write about the monsoon, it was a topic that immediately appealed to me. So I said yes within a few minutes of being asked that, because the monsoon is something that all of us have experienced in so many different ways, from childhood right up to the present day. And the idea of the monsoon is there are so many aspects of it. Of course, it's weather, climate, all of that. But then we have so many metaphors associated with the monsoon. The love and longing is obviously one that is front and center in most literature in India. But there are also fascinating details about the ecology as it changes with the rain. Right. And you can see it. I mean, we all talk about Haryali. I mean, everything becomes green. But there's much more than just the greenery. There are all sorts of insects. There's migration of birds to certain regions. There is the rivers themselves grow much larger. Within those rivers, there are so many more aquatic creatures that flourish. They breed during that time. So all of those elements to me are fascinating when I think about the monsoon.
Right. 2-3 lines, I'll summarize this, what you said in Hindi. जो स्टीफन साहब कह रहे हैं कि मानसून में सिर्फ बारिश या हरियाली नहीं होती है, उस वक्त बहुत सारा जो जीवन है, लाइफ है, वो और जीवंत हो उठता है. और ये पुस्तक जो है, ये स्टार्ट भी मसूरी से होती है और एंड भी मसूरी से होती है. एंड स्टार्ट ऑफ द बुक, इफ़ यू रीड, you tell about, thunderstorm and sudden rain and vanishing of the rain as abruptly as it appeared. And then you also caution people that don't link everything with climate change. And very interestingly, you ended it with the beetles, and it is called beetle hunting. So just tell us something about. First, let's talk about beetle hunting. I mean, because since you said the life becomes so, it rejuvenates.
No, I think when I was a child growing up in Mussoorie, one of the things that we loved to do during the monsoon was to collect beetles, because beetles would be attracted to the light posts. So at night we would go out in our raincoats, and we'd have a danda that we'd take with us, and we would catch the beetles and collect them in that way. And keep them alive and then release them afterwards. Sometimes we kept them in collections and things. But that was something from childhood that I remembered. It was a very strong association for me. But one of the things that in recent years, all of us that grew up in Landauer have noticed that there are fewer and fewer beetles. And nobody could really explain the reason for that. And there are lots of theories. Maybe it was forest fires because the beetles breed in the bark of the trees. Some people felt that it was climate change, that something was going on there, but nobody could give a definitive answer. But one of the interesting things that we found was that the beetles were attracted to the light bulbs along the road.
Okay.
And the old light bulbs, which were like, the traditional light bulbs,
Tungsten,
yellow,
yellow.
the yellow bulbs will attract the beetles. All of the lampposts in Mussoorie have now been changed to
LEDs. Yeah.
And we experimented with this, and we found actually that beetles and the moths will not come to the LED
White light, yes.
So we used a mercury vapor lamp, which attracted the moths and beetles. So suddenly there were those beetles that I knew from childhood.
Right.
So it was an issue of technology changing that, in a sense, now the beetles, there are definitely fewer, and there are causes for that we haven't explained.
Yeah.
But the simple truth was that we weren't seeing the beetles on the lampposts because they were LED bulbs rather than the traditional yellow tungsten bulb.
And that is also one issue. I mean, we can discuss it later in some program. That this lightning and this making lighting every part of the city during night has also caused some problems.
No, it's a huge problem here in Mussoorie in the sense that, first of all, we used to look down at Dehradun and you'd see one string of lights along Rajpur Road, and that was about all when I was a boy. Now we look at it, it's like the Milky Way. And in Mussoorie also, everything is lit up. So the dark sky that allowed us to see the stars, the dark sky that allowed creatures like bats and others to hunt, all of these creatures are affected by the prevalence of light. And it's pollution. In a sense, but
really?
Light pollution.
It is also pollution because you are using so much energy which mostly coming from thermal power plants, and you are polluting somewhere else also.
Sure.
That is one thing. And another thing which I want to ask you about, which you have mentioned in the initial part of this book, and this is not the only book we are going to talk about. You have said that sudden coming rain, sudden downpour, we generally very conveniently associate it with climate change. And today, as a reporter, I also witnessed this, that our cities are flooding, and some of the people, some of the experts like you have told me, and it is quite obvious there, that this is not because of climate change or sudden downpouring. This is also because we have encroached every part of city, and there is a bad municipal planning and taking care of it. So people try to hide, authorities try to hide behind climate change. So how big a problem as a nature lover you see this?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is climate change is real. I'm not denying climate change. In fact, the consequences of climate change are going to be significant, but they're going to be long-lasting issues. It isn't like one.
And you have written that they will be more devastating than what we believe. Maybe.
More than likely they will be. But I think that what often happens now is you get a sudden thunderstorm and lightning strikes a tree in your backyard and it falls over. Then you blame it on climate change. That is not climate change. That is maybe a small symptom of it, perhaps. But more than likely what it is just the erratic quality of the climate, the weather. The weather in Mussoorie has always been erratic. Nobody can tell me that on 15th June monsoon begins. It never begins 15th June.
Yeah.
It'll become in the 12th. This year it hasn't even really started and we're at the end of June.
I also, as a reporter, want to put it on record that climate change is real. And there are several very highly researched studies, IPCC reports also and other reports also, which say this. And you have also written about in this book, please read this book. And but sir, like in Delhi, in other cities also, there were hundreds of talabs. They will recharge the groundwater also. They will also collect the water, rainwater also. But now what we have done is that we have erected buildings, and we have either erected buildings or we have dumped garbage there.
Right.
And this is a big problem.
Well, the simple thing is that when it rains, the rain has to go somewhere. Either it'll soak into the ground, but when it's a heavy rain, it's going to flow somewhere. And in a place like Delhi, what has happened is, the Najafgarh drain is nothing but a polluted nala.
Yeah, it was Sahibi River, it's a part of Sahibi River.
Yeah, at one point it was the drainage, it's what took the water into the Yamuna and avoided flooding and things like that. So that's one very simple, it's a well-known example. But I think the thing is the construction of colonies, the construction of roads, all of this often didn't take into account the drainage that is required. And Delhi suffers from that, Dehradun suffers from that, Mussoorie suffers from it. In Mussoorie, what happens is because we're on a slope, if you don't allow the water to drain, it'll soak into the hillside and we'll have a landslide.
Yeah.
So we've got several obvious examples of that here. People have, developed a building, created a good-looking building, and then suddenly everything washes away because they didn't think about where is that water going to go. And water is a very, very powerful force,
yes,
and it erodes the hillsides constantly. So you have to take that into account.
Yeah. One thing I want to mention here, I won't talk about it in detail. Last year, I covered this disaster in Dharali. And when we went, we did not have any, road to cross this. So we had to cross the whole of mountain. And later when I came, because I was also careful like you always have been in your writing, I went to scientists and to ask that what was the reason, how the entire town was, it was swept away. So as you said, water has strong force, but these mountains are at some places, as it was in Dharali, was almost vertical, and it did not need much power to come down, and it was a prolonged moderate rainfall, and that was actually, a lot of scientists have put it on record, that is also climate change, because it happened because now water, because of this global warming, they are condensing at much higher altitude, as it was not happening earlier. So this just wanted to tell the viewers.
But I think with Dharali, what is interesting, and you would be able to answer this question for me, when I've seen the photographs, I've been to Dharali, but not since the disaster. But the old town of Dharali is safe.
Yeah.
It was the new developments, the tourist settlements, the ashrams, the sort of Maggie points and all of that. They're the ones that suffered the most.
Yeah. So what Stephen Saab is saying, that there is a river Bhagirathi which is flowing, and one side is old Dharali, which with all apple orchards and all, and opposite side is Bukba, right? So these two, Dharali were mostly safe because it was at a height. When you come too close to river and make back-to-back structures, there is always a problem, which we have witnessed during Kedarnath disaster also. One thing before we move to other books is that you talk about Goa and you talk about Western Ghats. These two are very close to my heart also, and Stephen Saab is going to Goa for a week after this interview. Sir, tell us something about why do you go to Goa? Why you are going to Goa? Generally, we decide our trips very convenient, nice, convenient, pleasant weather. Goa will be very sweaty at this time, sultry.
Well, it'll be very sweaty, but at the same time, I think of myself as a climate migrant in that way, because in a sense, we've started going to Goa as I got older, and Mussoorie got the cold in Mussoorie was difficult to manage, so we usually go in the winter to Goa. But we've also found, my wife and I have found, that Goa during the monsoon is one of the loveliest seasons of the year, because first of all, there's tremendous greenery, there's a little less tourist traffic, and when it rains, the temperature, it'll be hot and sweaty when it doesn't rain, but when it rains, it's lovely.
Oh, it's so lovely.
One of the most wonderful experiences. The other thing about Goa in the monsoon that I find fascinating is the wildlife, the reptiles, the insects, all of those that you can observe during the rains, because there are so many frogs, there are so many snakes, there are so many other moths, other creatures that come out at that time, which is fascinating for mine.
Readers will read everything in this book. I won't ask you to tell everything, but just two lines about the village. It was so fascinating. Seolim, that village? Seolim. And just tell the viewers what they find in this book about that village and that person, Alex.
Well, Seolim is a well-known settlement in North Goa. At one point, it was a village. Right now, I think it's more than a village. In that way. It's become built up quite a bit. But I was able to speak with Alex or Alexis, who's a cartoonist who lives there, a wonderful cartoonist and artist. And he was able to tell me, first of all, how things changed, but also how he started a festival that is right at the beginning of the monsoon, the Sanwao festival, which celebrates water, the presence of water and the coming of the monsoon, as well as a biblical narrative that's there as well. And this is very much a local festival that coincides with the onset of the monsoon, and it's a wonderful celebration of life and fertility at the beginning of the monsoon.
Right. So moving on, there are so many books written by you. More than 20 books you have written.
Something.
Right. So this is one other book which I recommend only those books which I have read, and this is one book not only I have read, I have recommended to many people. This is called Wild Himalayas in Natural History of the Greatest Mountain Range of Earth. These are small chapters, 4-5 pages chapters, and they talk about almost everything about nature and science and a lot of things. Now, this must have taken, it's a deeper writing, right, in comparison of the other book. How much time did you take to write this book? Just tell us something about it.
Well, this book took about 2 years to research. I was writing while I was researching, but I traveled the entire, I wouldn't say the entire length of the Himalaya, but from Arunachal in the east to Kashmir in the west and many places in between. Nepal, where I hadn't traveled much, I traveled there. I traveled to Bhutan and also across the Trans-Himalayan to Tibet and towards Mount Kailash and Mansarovar. So the effort was to explore as much of the territory of the Himalaya as possible. And for me, it was an excuse to visit places that I hadn't visited before. And to me, the focus, as in most of my writing, is on the natural history of the ecology, the environment, but also stories from nature, stories from mythology and folklore that illuminate nature in so many ways.
I'm just forgetting the name of a person you have mentioned in this book who would write about everything in his notebook, some plants, maybe he was here.
Well, D.N. Wadia, I think you're thinking of the great geologist, one of India's great scientists, who wrote a book called The Geology of India, and he studied the geology of Kashmir particularly, and he was a man who was out in the field much of the time and spent a lot of time walking through the Himalaya and taking notes on the rocks, the rock formations, the minerals that he found. And there's a Wadia Institute in Dehradun, which is named in his honor. He was actually from Gujarat. He was from Surat. His father was a station master in Surat. But then he was interested in geology. And but to me, one of the fascinating things about D.N. Wadia, and it goes for many of our great scientists, is he was a wonderful writer. If you read his accounts of geology, which is a fairly dry subject in most people's mind, but he brings it to life. He gives us a sense of how the landscape was formed, and how it changes, and what the future of that landscape might be.
And that writings you are now talking about, Mr. Wadia, is available in form of books.
Yes, his book, The Geology of India, was a textbook for almost 90 years in universities in India, and is still in print.
Yeah, I was talking about Khadak Singh Waldia,
Okay.
and yeah, he was also a renowned geologist, and I learned a lot from him while I was covering Kedarnath disaster. After that, writing the book. But
and
the person I found, I was talking about this person,
John Auden.
John Auden.
Well, he was a contemporary of D.N. Wadia's.
Yeah.
They were both in the Geological Survey of India.
Yeah.
And he was an Englishman, but he stayed on in India. He married a Bengali woman and lived in India after 47 and continued to work here. And he was interestingly the brother of W.H. Auden, one of the great English poets. But John Auden traveled through Garhwal primarily. He went up towards Gangotri, and then he crossed over through the Jarganga Valley into Tibet. And he has wonderful stories to tell, as well as describing the landscape, the geology of that. He has one story which I think is fascinating. He's camped up in the mountains in the Jarganga Valley, and an eagle has caught a wolf cub up there, and the wolf cub is struggling, and it falls from the eagle's talons into his camp.
Okay.
So he adopts that wolf cub, and the wolf cub then sleeps with him in his sleeping bag, and he takes it on as a pet. It's one of those stories that you wouldn't expect from a geologist.
Right.
But it's a touching story, and it also gives you a sense of his fascination, not just with rocks, but with this living landscape of the Himalaya.
Right. Sir, briefly tell us something about yourself. How you grew up in Mussoorie?
I was born in Mussoorie, and this has been my home for all my life. I've traveled away and lived in other places before, but I come back to Mussoorie as often as I can. And the Himalaya, in a sense, have shaped my view of the world. The Himalaya have been in a sense, my cornerstone as a writer. Whatever I write about, whether I'm writing about the Western Ghats, whether I'm writing about Delhi, whatever it may be, it's often with reference to the mountains,
right? Because
that is my home, and that's
even
familiar.
when you write about in this latest book about a hill which is highest outside Himalayas in Munnar in Kerala, you immediately mention Himalayas.
Exactly. Well, one of the fascinating things when I went to Munnar and the mountains near there was that so much of the foliage was similar to Mussoorie. It's 2,000 kilometers separates the Western Ghats, that part, the Nilgiris, in that way, and Mussoorie. And yet there were certain plants that I immediately recognized. And one of the interesting questions that ecologists have tried to answer is, how do we have this huge separation and yet we have species that are similar in two different parts of India, from the north and the south? And how did they get there? How did they cross over? Why are they not found in the middle? And so on and so forth. So to me it was fascinating, because I was recognizing things in the Nilgiris that were familiar plants here in Mussoorie.
And one thing about one comment on this book, Becoming a Mountain. This is more of a autobiographical sketch of your life. So I'll ask one question: how your interest in writing grew up? Because I find yourself a person who has been writing all through your life. Now you say you've been teaching also, but now you say that you have settled as a full-time writer. I think more than 10 years you are only writing now.
Only, actually more like 15 years now it's been that. And writing and teaching have gone hand in hand for much of my life, and I've been teaching writing, so it's in a sense it's very much part of the same process. But I always wanted to be a writer, and I'm fortunate to have had the opportunity to be able to write. I think I think better on the page than I do verbally. When I'm speaking like I'm speaking now, I say too much. Instead, when I'm working on the page, I find that it helps distill my thoughts. It helps me
to be more accurate.
To be more accurate, and also to make connections that I might not make if I were just speaking aloud.
Right. And another thing towards the end of this interview, that this book's title is In Search of Himalayan Journeys, Becoming a Mountain, Himalayan Journeys, in Search of Sacred and Sublime.
Yes.
I have heard it from so many people about Himalayas, sacred and sublime things. For you, what is sacred and sublime in Himalayas? There are mythological stories also. There are so many things, but I wanted to listen from you.
Well, my definition of sacred is probably more elastic than for most people.
Yes.
Partly because I'm an atheist. Though I am not a believer, I'm fascinated by the beliefs of others and the way in which people believe that a mountain is sacred, that a river is sacred, that a certain spot, a dham, is a sacred spot in that way. And so for me, that's fascination, even though I approach it with a sense of doubt rather than faith. But to me, doubt is as strong a motive as faith. And it's not that I denigrate the faith.
Yes.
But I simply come as a skeptic who asks questions about it.
Inquisitive
So why is that mountain sacred? I don't just accept it on face value. So when I look at Nanda Devi or I look at Mount Kailash, I ask myself, well, why do people worship this mountain? And there are, of course, there's the mythology. There's also the fact that it is a spectacular mountain.
Yeah.
But the sublime, I think, is attached to the sacred.
Yes.
Because for me, the sublime basically comes out of the idea that there is a combination of awe and fear. So when I'm in the mountains and I'm looking at Nanda Devi or I'm looking at one of the other peaks, whether it's Bandapunj or other peaks that I write about in the book, I see it as a beautiful landscape. And then I look down below my boots and it falls away 1,000 feet below there, and I'm absolutely terrified. And to me, that is the core of the sublime, and frankly, the core of the sacred, is that combination of awe and fear. And that's how many people approach God. That's how many people approach sacred animals like a tiger or a cobra. It's incredibly beautiful, and yet it can kill me. And that, to me, is the heart of spiritual experience, mystical experience, and religious experience. And I speak as someone who doesn't necessarily subscribe to that, but I try to understand it as someone who is a non-believer.
Can I say something here? Because I am also an atheist and I have read these stories about religion and philosophy with profound interest. You mentioned Nanda Devi, and I talk about whole of the Himalaya, whole of the Kumaon and Garhwal at least. We have so many local deities that we do not have to, and this is nothing against any religion. I was born in a Hindu family. We do not have to become a Hindu to protect our mountains and protect our nature. You mentioned Nanda Devi, and if I may be a little audacious to speak in front of a person like you who has got so much knowledge, that Nanda Devi is not just a deity, but it is also a daughter of the people of this state.
Right.
And Shiva is our son-in-law. And she is also the Adhishthatri Devi, means the top Devi which protects us.
Right.
So we have got so much relation with Nanda Devi that I, despite being atheist, I get overwhelmed with that feeling of a devout will get. So we would, Bill Atkins Saab had written that we almost, from being Kumaon, I know that this god of justice, Golu Devta, he was Chitai. But there is also a god of justice here which is called Pokhu. In Yamunotri area. So we have got so many local deities which protects us.
Well, and with Nanda, there's always Latu's shrine next to it. And Latu is the sort of the local deity that is worshipped alongside Nanda. And she, of course, is a Himalayan deity. I always say that when you travel the Chardham Yatra route, as you travel along the Chardham Yatra route, you will encounter many of the standard deities that are there in Hindu tradition. But if you walk 5 kilometers up from the pilgrim route itself, that's when you encounter each of these other deities that are there in the small shrines, the forest temples, the religious sites that are worshipped by people in the villages, not the pilgrims coming from the plains.
Yeah, while translating the Bill Atkins' work, I tried to go to some of the places mentioned there. So one of them was Pinakeshwar, where Lord Shiva's only bowman form, right? So the same thing which you are telling, when I was climbing the mountain, I had some local boys and they were offering milk on the stones on the way. I said, why? Because they said in Hindi कि हम इसलिए कर रहे हैं क्योंकि हम चाहते हैं हमारे घर में पशुधन जो है वो रहे, मतलब you understand this. So उसके लिए वो जंगल में पत्थरों के ऊपर दूध डाल रहे हैं. तो this is just a offering. Before we end, and I will ask you to read this one paragraph which I liked most. I would request you to talk about one book which Akshay ji was saying that I have unfortunately not read it. I'll read it, about some cobra. Which was, what is that?
Well, this was one of my most recent books, written after Wild Himalaya, and it's called The Cobra's Gaze, Exploring India's Wild Heritage. And it was an opportunity to go to different parts of India, to wild places, national parks, tiger reserves, but also places that are undeveloped and largely unspoiled in that way. And it was a book that took me right from the Sahyadris to Assam, to Ladakh and Gujarat, so all corners of India. And I was looking primarily for species that are often not known to people. For instance, in Goa, I focused on the bioluminescent fungi that come in the monsoon. I was fortunate to see king cobras in Agumbe in the Sahyadris, and so on and so forth. So it was an excuse for me to travel to wild places throughout the country.
Right. Now, one thing about beetles you told, this paragraph, I wanted to read it, but you read it. This one, so that people may know about how beetles, charmed you.
Right. Well, let me start here. Just as budding naturalists, I'm talking about myself as a young boy, beetles were our prime objective and best collected near the streetlights on the Chakkar and Tiri roads. As soon as it grew dark, we would set out with our gumboots and umbrellas, as well as long bamboo poles with which we knocked beetles off the lamp posts and nearby trees. They would often buzz through the air like incoming drones, while our torch beams pierced the darkness like searchlights. Hundreds of species of beetles emerged in the monsoon, but there were a dozen or so that we hunted, and for these we had our own names. The largest were common stags with pincers that looked like antlers, 3 to 5 centimeters long. Females of this species were called cows and had small, sharp pincers like nail clippers and delivered a painful bite. Another kind of stag beetle was a glossier black and somewhat smaller. These we dubbed Chinese stags for reasons I can't explain. Bamboo beetles used to be the most common species, a bit like large cockroaches with rusty red bodies and long antennae. Difficult to hold between your thumb and forefinger because of a soft carapace, they squirmed wildly when you picked them. The pincers on bamboo beetles were compact and strong, effortlessly snapping through matchsticks and twigs, and so on and so forth. Many other beetles also.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
I wish we meet again, and we will talk about other works also. If you have not read this book and other books by Stephen Orter Saab, I am giving a full link of the so that you can reach the books in my description box. You can read the book. But this interview was not about publicity of his books. This interview was about knowing a person I wanted to meet for many years, but just by reading his work. And I had heard a lot about him from Bill Atkins. Unfortunately, he's not alive now. So I'm so thankful.
Well, it's been my pleasure. It is very nice talking with you, and I hope we'll meet again before too long.
So I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Stephen Orter. If it helped you to see the monsoon, the Himalaya, climate change, or nature from a fresh perspective, please do share this video with friends, family, and anyone who you think loves books and the natural world. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Eco and Energy Talk and consider becoming an eco lover. Membership starts at just 59 rupees a month and comes with a loyalty badge, priority reply to your comments, and access to members-only videos. Most importantly, your support helps me to continue bringing thoughtful conversations like this to the channel. I would also love to hear your thoughts about this talk with Stephen Alter. Please leave a comment below. I'll be reading them and also replying. I am Hridesh Joshi. Thank you for watching.